Hello, I'm Rob White, President of Envision Strategies. Welcome to our next chapter in the Thought Leadership series that we've been conducting. And today's session, we've invited Paul Riel, Associate Vice President of Auxiliary Services at Boston University, to talk with us about his perspective on guiding performance solutions and the ways in which guiding can support the student experience and really some exciting changes that they've been making with their guiding program. Paul's responsible for a very large housing program there, as well as the outsourced residential dining, retail dining, and catering programs and capital projects. And so thanks, Paul, for joining us. I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself, and then we'll talk through our topics here.
Well, thanks, Rob, and good morning. It's happy to be with you. I'm Paul Riel, Associate Vice President at Boston University. I've been here about 6 years and enjoy being in the Boston area and working with a very dynamic and large urban institution, unlike other programs I've been involved in. This has been a phenomenal experience, and so I'm really excited about being here and talking more about our program. A little bit about BU. As Rob mentioned, we're in an urban campus. We are in Boston, right on Commonwealth Avenue. We have a very long campus, almost 2 miles from point to point, so getting around is interesting for our students and staff. We've got about 35,000 students at the university. Nearly half of those are undergrads. The other half are graduate students. We run, as Rob mentioned, 5 all-security dining programs, as well as 20 or so retail locations, and then, of course, our catering program. So delighted to be with you this morning, Rob. Looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Paul. So really, first up is really about the kind of dining performance, how you measure it, what metrics you look at, and how you gather that information, and kind of what ways that informs the actions you take.
Sure. It's a great question. Something we spent a lot of time on here, as I'm sure all of our colleagues do. Without the data, we really can't know where we're going and what we're doing. Our program has almost 12,000 students on meal plans, and so you can imagine we have a lot of information coming to us, and so we spend a lot of time looking at various data points. Our campus, BU itself, uses a program called Power BI, which is a Microsoft product, which allows us to feed data in, and then it visualizes the information for us in some pretty creative and cool ways. And the more you get better at using that program, I think the better the information looks at. We look at many of the traditional KPIs that I'm sure everyone else on the call looks at. We certainly look at cost per meals. We're looking at our meal swipes, how many students are coming into our dining halls. We're looking at revenue as a percentage of expense, and we look at certainly how many students are eating and where they're eating. This is an important part because in a few minutes we'll talk about our meal plan itself and some of the changes we've made to it. We also use a Grow Pub program on our campus, and so there's an awful lot of work related to the data around that. How many students are using that program as compared to being in the dining halls. That's some information we compare back and forth. We have a very active sustainability program here, so our what we call Choose to Reuse, and that's an extension of our Power BI reporting, where we talk about how many students are using reusable containers and bringing them back in, so we can see the success of that program. And so we do spend a great deal of time using these various data points to look at our program. And as in all cases, if things seem to be working where they need to be working, we're fine. If we need to tweak something, we're tweaking something. But this is information we look at daily. These Power BI reports generate reports every 15 minutes for us, so we're able to really get 15-minute counts on who's in our dining halls, who's in our spaces, where they are, where they're coming from, and allows us to make decisions in the moment, really quickly. If we need to change a program or a particular operating unit, we're able to quickly adapt and make, I hope, positive changes for our students, so they have a great dining experience with us.
That's fantastic, Paul. I know there's been a lot of interest in building that sort of a customized dashboard. Could you say a little bit about how you got there and how that, do you have a person on your staff that has set it up and runs it, who has access to it, kind of a little bit more about how it works into your business
Yeah,
operations?
it's a great question. I will say we didn't get there easily.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I think we started out where everyone else did. Everything was on paper, maybe some Excel spreadsheets, maybe some
Yeah.
Access documents, and we just were sort of thinking about, what's the larger picture here, and how can we see the larger picture? Simultaneously, the university had made a decision to go with Power BI, and so we were an early adopter to one of the first ones on campus that got into it. So we
Yeah.
were early adopters to it, but we're also sort of early learners on how to use it. We held some seminars on understanding how that product itself works.
Yeah.
Uh, Once we got it set up, we realized there really need to be subject matter experts doing this work. This isn't really a program that's
Yeah.
for a layperson. You really do have to really understand how to build the reports. And so we have invested in staff within auxiliary services to focus on really the data management of our information. As you mentioned earlier in the introduction, auxiliary services is a large, comprehensive unit that involves more areas than just dining and housing, but
Well,
so a lot of information comes at us, and so we needed a way to manage it. And so we really started focusing on the dining portion first and the housing portion first, because those are our two largest units. But we needed to figure this out. So it did take some time to create the space for us to understand what it could do. And now we're at a point where we're a little more playful with it, because we've got the baseline of information in there. It really is capturing how your students themselves, where they are, where they come from. Then you start to layer in information about where they're taking their meals and what kind of meals they're taking, and the retail side is how much do they spend per meal on a retail program, and you can begin to sort of build out really deep intelligence on users and use cases of our campus. I will say this isn't anything that's really a private issue in terms of privacy. We're not taking any information from students that isn't already known about it. It really is just more a way of coding the information in such a way that we have a deeper understanding of how it's being used. And that'll make some sense later on when we talk about our meal plans and some of the logic behind why we thought our meal plans needed to be changing and what we needed to do. We've really partly made that decision based on the data we were able to look at, and we felt confident in the data itself. But the program itself and the way we use the program continues to evolve, and we continue to look for ways in which we can enhance it. I mean, just recently we looked at some information in one of our other programs, in our housing program, about swipes going into residence halls. How often do they come in? And that helped us make some decisions around scheduling. But see if they're coming in at later hours, we need more people working the desk at a later hour than we do earlier in an hour. So you really can use this tool just to make some labor decisions, to make some financial decisions, and even really costing around what it would take to do a project. As I mentioned, some capital project work we do, just really where the value is in terms of doing work really comes out of what we're able to achieve from the data. And having some trained folks in our organizations who can do this work has been very powerful for us.
Right. So it sounds like you've mentioned quite a bit of operational and financial data that you're plugging into the dashboard. Anything on the customer sentiment or satisfaction side?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is, and that's just something we continue to noodle on, because you really want to have a sense of what is our customer, our guest, our student, our staff. What is their takeaways from our program? And you could argue, well, if they're repeat customers, then we're doing good work. But when you have an all-you-can-eat program or a closed ecosystem like we have, that's sort of false narrative to think it's only simply because they're coming back. It's a sign of satisfaction.
Right.
And so, I think we're always looking for, and we haven't found it yet. We're looking for that ultimate way in which we can measure student satisfaction. We do it through surveys. We participate in a lot of the regional and national survey documents that are out there. We've done some work, when we were building out the meal plan program, we've done some work around surveys. So that gives us, but that's really point in time it's now, a couple of years old. So it's really difficult to say that's really where students are. We've used some of these spontaneous programs where you're able to sort of make a decision in a moment. If you're pleased about something or not, then that's works for us. But it's really difficult to say what are they pleased about. So we sort of migrated away from that. This year we're going to do some other things around tabletop exercises and actually confronting students at the tables. Maybe confront is the wrong word, but talking to students at the tables and saying, asking them about their experience and maybe doing some more spot survey kind of work where we're like in the moment. How was your meal? This is going to be more labor intensive for us to do it, but we think maybe this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
The Power BI program gives you opportunities to put as much data in there as you want. It's just the data collection piece that I think we have to keep working on to find out what's the right one for us. It's a huge piece for us. We don't want to do all this work and realize we're doing the wrong thing, and our consumers are not pleased with what we're doing, and we don't know that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's labor intensive to get people to do it. Folks are not inclined to do a 5-question survey or a 3-question survey. I mean, admittedly, when you go to a restaurant, they ask you to do the same thing when you're checking out. And I don't, even though it's as easy as can be, I just don't have the desire to do it as much. I probably should, but I don't. And that's frustrating to everybody because they really don't want to know how it went. So students are no different. They don't have the time for it. So we have to figure out ways to make that easier. And we'd love to hear from others around if other folks have figured this out. We haven't figured it out entirely yet. I think we're leaning in on these interrupt surveys we're going to try to do in our dining halls and see how that takes us. But come back in 6 months or a year, and I'll tell you how that's going.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that's an admirable trait that's been a part of I think the culture there in auxiliary service for a long time, which has been to endeavor to figure out what's next and how to really understand, almost like the 80-20 rule of what kind of changes can you make that will have the most greatest impact. So well, kind of continuing with that thought, there are, I think those of us in the dining world have felt for a long time that it's a critical element in supporting student success. But I wonder if there are, in your world, are there kind of like 3 top topics or things that come up quite a bit within auxiliary services that are, factors in the way that your services contribute to student success?
I would say yes, there are. And I think in light of the fact that we have a new president who just started in July, she brings an element and a connoisseurship around this as well from her previous institutions. And so that's sort of getting infused into how we look at our work. Everyone who's gone through a presidential change rethinks their organization, make sure where we are. But I think we have been focusing, and then clearly she has been challenging us to do the same thing. We think about the student experience itself. When a student comes to campus, what's that experience like? You mentioned the auxiliary programs that we're involved in, and much of that is on the service side of what we do with our fitness centers and our transportation pieces, going to the bookstore, certainly coming into a dining program, checking into your room. These are all experiences that students have while they're here. We're not on the academic side, and so we really are in a support role where we're able to help students have great experiences. And in large part, we tell our staff we really just want to get out of the way of students being successful academically. So don't create barriers to students being successful. Allow them to have good experience with us that make them go to the classroom and be successful where they are. So we spend a lot of time talking about, how do we do that? And so that'd be the second piece I just would mention. We just try to take the barriers down. We try to work on student success. We work on reducing barriers to success. And then the third thing I think we talk about is food insecurity and food variety, making sure that we provide the kinds of foods and the kind of environment that students, when they come here, they feel home, they feel welcome, they feel like they're part of something, they feel like we're thoughtful in the menu preparations that we do. With as many students as we have on meal plans, you can imagine we have a wide variety of dining preferences and what students would like to see in the dining program. And so there's a lot of work on menu preparation and how do we do this. But we still owe them a great meal every time they come in, whenever they come in. And that is the work that our chefs do and our dietitians do and the dining directors do and so forth. Even I would maybe extrapolate that into the retail side as well, and maybe even deeper into catering if you happen to be part of one of our catering events. But student experience, reducing barriers to success, and then the food varieties and food choices we make available. I think those are top of mind of things that we think about. We're less than 2 weeks away, students moving back this fall, so it's clearly what we're focusing on now before students come back in a couple of weeks.
And have there been so you've now got a year under your belt with that, and you're facing now a new semester. Any changes that you or any adjustments or things that you think about? Is I know you're always thinking about, well, what's next in the
Yeah.
program, and yet to your very good point, you don't want to make too many changes too fast and confuse matters. But are there things that you think now that you've had that in place, that meal plan change, the patterns have changed? It sounds like they're using the dining halls at a higher rate,
Yep.
higher satisfaction. So that's all great. Do you leave it where it is, or are there thoughts you have about future adjustments you may make or questions you have on?
Yeah, a couple of takeaways. We were surprised and now pleasantly surprised. But initially, we were surprised by our breakfast program just exploded. Whereas
Right.
it was a program that was pretty timid and pretty
Yeah.
mild,
Yeah.
to say the least. It really was sort of the hardcore breakfast eaters would show up, but we really just didn't have much of a program
Yeah.
there. So when we went to the all access plan, it really changed. I mean, dramatically. I mean, it's increased to 25% in our dining halls across our
Sure.
system. So suddenly, real students realize, look, I'm not being charged for a meal like I used to on a block plan, so I can go in and get a bagel and a cup of coffee and leave and get on. And we saw that just explode for us, which is
Good.
not what we expected, not what we were thinking about. It clearly
What?
had impact to how we were organized with labor, and so there was some shifting and adjusting. But this is where the data helped us. We saw it coming. We could see the trends going on, and so we were able to make some adjustments along the way. So that was a good outcome. That's something we really enjoyed seeing, and happy to do it. There's a consequence in the sense we're seeing a dip in our retail side now because more students are using the dining program. So what we wanted to do, we got them back to dining halls. That's really going well, but they're not spending as much time and dollars in our retail side. So having retail folks are having to spend time thinking about ways in which we can market and change and sort of update the program, which is what we like doing. We don't like to get soft in our business models. And so this has been a challenge for the retail folks to think about ways in which you can draw that market back in. It's had an impact to our late night program. We've had late night programs, much like other colleagues on the call, where we open up after the meal plan closes and we go through a retail program. But when you can eat all you want to eat, they were just coming back in at 9:00 and sort of taking on another meal. And so our late night program isn't performing at a level that we thought it would perform at. So we had to think about this. And so, you asked the question what we're doing. I mean, we're shifting. For example, this fall, we've got some high-end vending programs we're going to bring in, and we're going to try within our convenience store programs, high-end vending programs to offset some of the late nights. So I'm not going to run a late night program in one of our dining halls this fall as an experiment, and we will see if students migrate to a local one of our convenience stores, which is in the same building, but it's a few steps away, and try some of these late night vending programs. I'll keep the subway going and a few things like that. So we're like anybody else. We're trying to tweak the business to keep the financial performance where it needs to be, but also look at what's the demand of the student. And I mentioned earlier, we're trying to create reduced barriers to success. If that late night program is a barrier because they don't want it anymore and something else would work better for them, we're going to try that. And this is an investment for us. We're going to give it a shot. It may be we don't have a late night program after all. Maybe we stop doing something and we do something else. But I think the beauty of the kind of work we do, and you got to sort of feel the same thing on your side, Rob. You're in spaces all over the country. It's exciting to see what can work it's exciting to be in a position where you can make some changes and tweak something and give something a nudge and try it. If it doesn't work, you can come back to something else. But I mean, the idea is to keep probing and looking for solutions that will work for your campus. I mean, what we're doing may not work on somebody else's campus, admittedly. So it's not a one for one. But the takeaway for us is keep probing, keep looking for something else, because there is that edge out there that I think we're all trying to find, and we'll keep looking for it as well as we do our program here in Boston.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, to bring it full circle, I mean, you're guided by those three, kind of initiatives that you mentioned. Your new president of supporting the student experience and reducing barriers to success, and then making sure that there's appropriate variety to meet you have a very diverse student population in an urban setting. And there's, as most campuses that we know of are doing their best to address food insecurity. So you've got those kind of three pillars, and what you've done to integrate data, using data to measure and understand, well, how effective are we in meeting those goals? And I really, I think it's really impressive, the level of commitment you have to the ongoing kind of tinkering with the formula to reach those goals. So it's really great, and really appreciate your sharing that with us today, and wish you the best. I'm sure I have a neighbor whose son is a first year, came back from the visiting, the orientation tour, really all excited. And I didn't get a chance to ask him how the food was, but I'm sure with these new adjustments, it's going to be, you're going to have a lot of happy students. So,
Yeah, I think about my college experience. I mean, I've been in higher ed. This is like almost 4 decades now. So I've gone through a lot of, there are a lot of places and seen a lot of things, but I think the quality and the level of emphasis on food and food preparation and food variety, and even around sustainability and the things that we're doing are just really, it's an incredible time to be in higher education and in the food business.
Yeah,
there are so many cutting edge things that are happening now, and so many things are going on, but it still comes back to the fundamentals of you've got a 19-year-old coming into your dining hall who's got just a world of experiences going on in their head, and they're trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they're looking for a place to eat, and they want a good meal, and maybe some fellowship with somebody else, maybe not. But dining halls still give us that opportunity. And so when we talk about student experience, we really see food as a linchpin, the tent pole, if you will, of the student experience at a university. They just have so many times where they're sitting around with friends and just having a meal and just talking about whatever that is. And many of the experiences that I recall as an undergrad and a grad student, and just even now, are usually over food. They're usually over some kind of a meal, and they're powerful. And we see that as an extension of what the university can do for students. So we're delighted to be a part of it, and thrilled that we get a chance to share our program with you today.
Well, thanks, Paul. Have a great day, and very much appreciate your spending some time and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you, Rob.